This is Ecotricity's EcoTEC Roundup show from Aotearoa's first and only climate-positive certified renewable electricity provider. We only source from wind, hydro and solar, and we are the leading supplier of electricity to EVs in Aotearoa. Switch today at ecotricity.co.nz. Welcome back to another roundup of news from the world of clean cars and green energy. Thanks for joining me. I would love nothing more than to start the show today with something other than the just announced US tariffs on everything from the orange leader of that nation, but I fear it's so impactful to the world of cleaner, greener, safer, smarter and more equitable transportation and energy that we have no other choice. Sorry. So I'm going to be as quick as I can be. Midweek, US President Donald Trump announced blanket baseline tariffs of 10% on all goods entering the US, with far higher tariffs on certain countries. This has resulted in even uninhabited islands suddenly getting tariffs slapped on them, and island nations with tiny populations seeing tariffs nearly triple the baseline. Why? Who knows, but there is evidence to suggest that the list was generated by a large language model, aka AI, and several academics have already duplicated the exact tariff list announced by feeding in data to various AI systems. The auto industry, including the EV sector, is reeling, and auto industry insiders are now warning that these tariffs could decimate the stability of the global automotive market if they last for more than a few weeks. Earlier this week, the president stated he really didn't care if tariffs pushed car prices up, and while parts of vehicles made in the US are currently tariff-free if they are compliant with USMCA, that will unfortunately change in the near future. If you are outside of the US, I'm sorry. And if you are in the US, know that everything is going to get a whole lot more expensive, including EVs, e-bikes, and the food you eat. Polestar has already removed the Polestar 2 from sale in the US, a vehicle made in China, and I think things are going to just get worse. Leopards are very much about to start eating lots of faces. Before we get to the good timeline stories, we need to stick around in MAGA world a little more with a story that broke last week just after we had filmed last week's episode. On Friday, Utah businessman, founder and former CEO of Nikola Motors, Trevor Milton, who had been convicted of defrauding investors of hundreds of millions of dollars by making false statements to investors about Nikola's product portfolio, received a full pardon from the White House. Milton's conviction came after an independent analyst discovered that Nikola had staged a video purportedly showing a Nikola One semi driving down the road under its own power when it was actually just rolling down the hill under gravity. Milton's serial fraud against investors led to a 4-year custodial sentence, which he hadn't begun to serve thanks to a lengthy appeals process and a large bond payment. But while he was out on bond, Milton donated approximately $1.8 million to the Trump 2024 election campaign. And when asked why he had pardoned Milton by a reporter on Friday, President Trump suggested it had been, quote, highly recommended by many people, end quote, and seemed to imply that Milton was prosecuted because of his support for the president. So, what the heck? Life hack, if you get in trouble with the authorities, just tell them you support the president. To happier news now, and the news that BYD sold more than 1 million new energy vehicles during the first quarter of 2025. For full context, we need to remember that the term new energy vehicle includes plug-in hybrid, battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and doesn't differentiate between private and commercial vehicles. But in BYD's case, figures were broken down, allowing us to drill, showing that of the 986,098 passenger cars sold, 42.2% were fully electric, which equates to 416,388 cars. This means BYD sold more EVs during Q1 than Tesla, which just reported sales during the same period of 336,681 cars, down 13% year over year. Volvo confirmed this week that its board of directors has decided to replace the brand's CEO, Jim Rowan, with former CEO Håkan Samuelsson with immediate effect. Rowan, who replaced Samuelsson in 2022, oversaw quite a large period of change at Volvo and helped usher in its EX30 and EX90 models. Yet Volvo's board seems happier with Samuelsson back at the helm and says he will retain his resumed position for the next 2 years while a long-term successor is found. According to insider rumours, the switchover was initiated by Volvo's majority shareholder, Chinese automotive giant Geely, which had become increasingly frustrated with Rowan's decisions. Interestingly, it's also worth noting that while Samuelsson hasn't been CEO at Volvo for the last 3 years, he has held a position on the board of directors during that time. Aptera, the California-based solar electric vehicle company, published details of its first long-distance road trip last week, along with some truly impressive efficiency figures. As the company notes in its latest video updates, it took Hermes, one of its track validation production intent vehicles, on a 300-mile trek across Arizona from Flagstaff to Lake Havasu, with company co-founder and co-CEO Steve Fambro at the wheel. While this particular production intent vehicle is heavier than the planned production models, the vehicle managed 122 watt-hours per mile, which is equivalent to 8.3 miles per kilowatt-hour or 7.58 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometres. It's a little less efficient than the planned 10 miles per kilowatt-hour or 100 watt-hours per mile, but it's by far the most efficient EV we've seen promised for production yet. Fingers crossed, it will reach production. As regulars will know, both Hyundai and its sibling brands Genesis and Kia have enjoyed a good few years when it comes to EV sales, and each offers a variety of different battery electric models for customers to choose from. Earlier this year, Kia and Hyundai both gave their respective eGMP-based crossovers, the Kia EV6 and Hyundai Ioniq 5, a bit of a facelift, and this week at the Seoul Mobility Show, Hyundai revealed a facelifted Ioniq 6. Right now, we don't have any video, only photos, but the models feature a more aggressive, yet also aerodynamic front end with narrow LED headlights finishing off their sculptured hood. Inside, there's a new redesigned steering wheel and centre console, along with larger climate control display. It's nothing revolutionary, and you won't be able to get the rear view cameras instead of mirrors in some markets, but I honestly love that Hyundai is happily making an honest-to-goodness, aerodynamic, energy-efficient sedan in a world filled to the brim with massive, oversized SUVs. Troubled Swedish battery startup Northvolt was in the headlines several times this week, and sadly for all of the wrong reasons. On Tuesday, the company's bankruptcy trustees in Sweden finalised a plan to allow the firm to continue operating in some capacity, but at the expense of nearly 3,000 jobs at the firm. Meanwhile, its US subsidiary filed an emergency motion in Texas to end its Chapter 11 restructuring as quickly as possible, given the bankruptcy of its parent company in Sweden. The US arm is trying to avoid a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, as doing so would incur additional legal fees and added complexity. But it does mean that Northvolt's future in the US and Canada is now looking extremely grim. But there is at least hope, for now at least, that the original Swedish firm can rise from the ashes. There's no news on what will happen to Northvolt's German production facility. In order to transition the world's energy consumption away from fossil fuels and towards renewable sources of energy, we have to change how our homes are heated and cooled. And this week, Dandelion Energy, alongside US building firm Lennar, announced the official deployment of one of the largest housing developments to be built in the US that uses geothermal heat pumps as standard to both heat and cool the homes. Unlike air-sourced heat pump systems, which transfer heat energy in and out of homes using large radiators and air compressors, geothermal systems transfer heat in and out of the ground by using embedded coils placed into the soil. This eliminates the need for large and often noisy outside air compressors. They're also more energy efficient and require less maintenance than air-sourced heat pumps, further reducing customers' energy bills. Here's hoping to more ground-sourced heat pump adoption in the near future. Renault and Nissan have worked together on electric vehicle technologies for more than 15 years, thanks to the two firms' joint shareholding in each other. But a new agreement signed this week by the two firms will see Nissan's obligation to invest in Renault's Ampere EV division released, leaving Nissan free to pursue its own EV plans moving forwards. Renault and Nissan signed an agreement in July 2023 to establish their respective planned investments into Ampere, with Nissan due to invest €600 million in the endeavour. In exchange, it was going to get to use Ampere-derived vehicle platforms for future Nissan EVs. It's not clear what this means long-term now that that's changed, but it's worth noting that Nissan still plans on paying Renault to make its just-announced Nissan Micra EV, along with a Twingo-sized EV for city travel. So watch this space. And finally for the segment, hot on the heels of more successful test flights and confirmation of a production location for its first electric eVTOL aircraft, eHang has announced the receipt of its official air operator certificates in China. Like any aircraft manufacturer, eHang has put its EH216S eVTOL craft through an exhaustive certification process, covering everything from safety procedures through to maintenance requirements and air stability. And this week it confirmed that its first batch of air operator certificates, allowing it to begin civil operations with paying customers, has been granted to it by the Civil Aviation Administration of China. It's still early days for the company, which has to achieve volume production in order to expand its eVTOL service across China, but it's a milestone that many firms fail to reach. eHang hopes its customers will now be able to apply for their own operational certifications to operate everything from sightseeing to short commuter taxi services in the near future. Before we get to the last two stories, I have a quick question. Are you in the market for a new EV? Because if you are, and you live in Aotearoa, you should totally check out our very own buyer's guide at ecotricity.co.nz. It's packed with tons of information you need to pick a car that's right for you and includes plenty of details about available vehicles, daily life with an EV, things like charging and how to file and pay your RUCs and so much more. So follow the links below and start your journey today. And now it's time for those last two stories. Developing a vehicle with self-driving technology that can handle 95% of all situations on the road is pretty easy. At least that's what we're told. But dealing with that last 5% is exponentially harder, and few companies have managed to achieve the level of autonomous vehicle operation that Waymo's robotaxi fleet has. And in recent months, we've shared how the company has expanded its service into other areas and how it's not only taking paying customers, but starting to make serious bank from its service. But, well, just like human drivers, robotaxis aren't always perfect on the road, and this week we learned that in San Francisco last year, Waymo's fleet of robotaxis racked up $65,000 in traffic violations. Most of them, 589, were parking tickets, but 124 of them were for obstructing traffic. Among the list of things that were done that shouldn't have been done included obstructing traffic, ignoring street cleaning restrictions, and parking where the vehicles weren't supposed to. So the next time you get a ticket, just remember, you are as good as a robot. And finally, I don't know about you, but I have a box of mains adapters in my server closet that attest to how, for many years before the advent of USB-C, pretty much every gadget or doodad you purchased came with its own special proprietary charger. Thanks to changes in EU law over mobile phones and tablets, that's far better than it once was. But when it comes to things like e-bikes and other micromobility choices, the chances are you still have a weird proprietary connector that you have to use to juice up with, which is where electric bicycle company Ampere comes in. It's just unveiled the world's first e-bike that you charge using a USB-C cable. Now, I know what you are thinking. How can USB-C charge an e-bike battery? But actually, USB-C is quite the capable standard, and in the right configuration can deliver up to 240 watts of power. That might not seem like much, especially when we talk about hundreds of kilowatts for electric cars. But when you consider that many e-bike battery packs are just a kilowatt hour or so, it makes sense to use something like USB-C, so you then don't have to carry a massive brick around with you. I frankly think it's a fantastic idea, and here's to a future of USB-C charging for e-bikes and other micromobility solutions. And on that note, we are done for today. Before I go though, do make sure you've hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest in EV news from the channel. And if you haven't switched yet, it's high time to switch to Aotearoa's first and only climate positive certified renewable electricity provider. It is super easy to make the switch, and in doing so, you'll help the nation wean itself off dirty energy and onto clean green power that will keep keep the land beautiful for generations to come. I'll be back next week, but in the meantime, do check out the lovely Gavin Kiwi EV Shoebridge's offerings on this very same channel. He's always doing something fun, so do make sure you hit subscribe. Thanks for joining me. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield. Ka kite! See you next time.